Welcome to Confessions of an Entrepreneur, powered by RG. My name is Carl Swansbury, and I'm thrilled today to welcome Sergio Petrucci onto my podcast. For those of you who don't know Sergio, Sergio is a Northeast born and bred individual who not only has spent many years working within many large corporates like Reg Vardy in the area of sales and marketing, but more recently set up and has scaled up the Red Sky Foundation, which is a charity based here in the Northeast, raising the profile of and much needed funds for individuals who have heart defects. So for sure is a life-changing and life-saving charity. I'm really looking forward to having Sergio on my podcast today to find out a little bit more about his journey, what inspired him 8 years ago, along with his wife Emma, to set up the Red Sky Foundation, and indeed some of the things he learned in business, which today he's now implementing for the benefit of the foundation. I'm thoroughly looking forward to having Sergio on my podcast today, so I'm delighted that you, our viewers, could join us. Sergio, I just wanted to start by welcoming you onto my Confessions of an Entrepreneur podcast. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you in that seat.
I'm thrilled to be here, Carl. It's an absolute privilege. I've had to travel all the way from Sunderland to get here today.
Wow. Did you bring your passport to cross the Tyne Bridge,
I did,
Sergio?
but you know what? They just waved me through. The work we've been doing in Newcastle.
Well, you are. That's what an MBE gives you. But we'll come back to that in a little while. So obviously, Sergio, I've known you as a friend for a very long time, but this is the first time we've actually sat down and had this type of conversation.
Without loud music in the background.
That's right. Without a dance floor.
A pint in your hand. And
You've got it. You've got it. So I'd love to really get to understand a little bit more about you and the things that motivate and drive you. But before we go back to the beginning, I'd love to just understand what the catalyst was to set up Red Sky Foundation.
Well, it's no secret that we went on a personal journey when our little girl had open heart surgery at the Freeman Hospital. We were cared for by superheroes in the Freeman, and other people would refer to them as doctors and nurses, but to me, I'll be forever in debt to them for the service that they provided for us and the care that they gave us. The morning Luna had her operation, that sunrise, I'll never forget, imprinted on my memory, Carl, and it created the most fiery red sky, and that's where the name comes from.
Awesome.
We never looked back, and when the lady had suggested that we do a bit of fundraising to say thank you, and that's what we did.
And of course, I can see why you feel indebted to the Freeman Hospital and all of the superheroes who saved your daughter's life, fundamentally. But what was it that gave you the time, the focus, the motivation to set up the foundation and to raise the many millions of pounds that you have done since? Because a lot of people have benefited from the Freeman, but perhaps haven't done what you've gone on to do.
Well, I mean, I guess what gave me the motivation to do it was the fact that somebody had asked us for some support. I saw with my own eyes the lack of resources and the need for machinery, the equipment. And sometimes families land at the Freeman Hospital with just the clothes on their back. But we made friends in there, and we call them family now, heart families. And I've walked in their shoes, and I still will continue to do this for as many years to come, because when people say, do you really understand what it's like to go through this experience? I certainly do.
And not to go back to what was a traumatic time for you and your wife, but just to help people appreciate how difficult it must have been, because not everyone has had to go through the challenges and trauma that you have. I mean, what was it like knowing that without a transplant, your daughter would die? What was that like?
Well, Luna was lucky. She didn't need to rely on somebody else's child to die for hers to continue. She wasn't in need of a transplant. For all she was born with congenital heart disease, she was born with 2 holes in her tiny heart, which had to be fixed. And so our time of working with families of all scenarios, in all conditions now, that we have really developed a strong focus on supporting families in need of the gift of life, in need of the support, and also financial support, whether that's paying someone's bills for them, making sure they've got food to eat, making sure they've got a roof over their head while the sick children are in hospital.
Yeah.
What we do is absolutely just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what you see. And it's everything that's going on in the background, the late night phone calls from parents in tears asking for support. It never stops. The work never stops. And I guess that's the drive and the determination that as a human and the love that we have for these families, it's so telling, because we'll never let them go. Once they become attached to Red Sky, they don't want to go.
As you say, it's a family. And we'll come back to talk about the Red Sky Foundation a little later, Sergio, because it's such a phenomenal charity that achieves so much for the benefit of others. So I'd like to spend a bit more time talking about it. But for now, it would be good to go right back and talk a little bit about, I guess, your early years. So in terms of where you were educated?
No problem at all. How far back do you want to go? When I was sitting on a little stool in the garden.
Why not?
My mum picking out garden peas.
Why not, Sergio?
I guess, well, my history, as my name suggests, is I am half Italian. My dad comes from Rome, or just outside of Rome. He was a hairdresser by trade and probably one of the Northeast's finest hairdressers when he came to England. And I guess I've been brought up on strong family values. And my mum was from Chesley Street. They're not as glamorous as Roma.
That's right.
That's for sure. And my dad learned his trade in Rome. He went to L'Oreal School of Hairdressing.
Wow.
Not too far from the Spanish Steps. And it's a lovely story because my father couldn't speak English, but he had a friend in Newcastle, not too far from here actually, at Salon 66. And he said, look, you know, come on work with me in Newcastle. It's a great place. And he did. He took a bold journey. The story's really, really nice, you know, because he kissed his mum, my nonna, and on the cheek, and she'd sewn a little pocket on the inside of his vest, put some money inside, and that's for his emergency, so nobody could take it off him, you know.
Wow.
Most people would call it a bum bag these days.
That's right.
But no, yeah. And he took a train. He'd never been on a train before. And he came all the way to London, missed his train from London King's Cross to come to Newcastle, and had to stay in accommodation where there was homeless people there. And he tells me the story. It's quite powerful, really. He slept on his suitcase for fear of somebody taking it from him, and he landed in Newcastle. And when he arrived at Salon 66, all of the staff were excited. And guess what? My mummy, yes, Janice, was waiting there. And as soon as eyes met, they fell in love.
So she was an employee in the salon, presumably?
She was a junior in the salon.
Wow.
And when my dad arrived, and yeah, it's a lovely story. They would say that they couldn't speak English. She couldn't speak Italian, but they spoke and say, glass, bicchieri, you know, acqua, water. And that's how they communicated. And they taught each other the language. But there is no better language than the language of love, Carlo, is there?
Oh my gosh, I can't believe you've just said that out loud on a podcast. And you were born and bred in the Northeast?
Why, I am a Mackem.
And the right side of the time, therefore, for our viewers who don't know the difference between Geordie and Mackem.
Of course. I mean, I don't know who gets to watch your podcast, Carl. Will this go far and wide?
Will indeed. Wow. Certainly more south than Chesterley Street. So
fabulous. Well, yes, I was born in Sunderland Royal Hospital, and I was fortunate enough to be privately educated.
Which school did you go to?
I went to a school called Argyle House. It was an all-boys school. We had to wear grey shorts.
Oh gosh.
A little green jacket, and we weren't allowed to wear hair gel, which was a bit of a challenge for me, because I have a cow's lick on that side and a cow's lick on this side. And to keep those down, to avoid me looking like Eddie Munster, I had to wear gel, but we weren't allowed it at school.
Oh, gosh.
So every morning, Agostino would tongue my hair forward to make sure that the cow's licks would look presentable, you see. And one day at school, I chanced my luck. There was a new wax came out, new product. Put it on. I got a little bit of a quiff like yours is today, yeah? And I put it on, and the headmaster took me to the toilet and made me wash my hair at school. I was mortified. I looked worse than I did when I went to school. We should have just left it on. Never forget. But he had a thing about that. There was another guy, he was called Glyn Wilson, or never forget, he had hair, big blonde hair, curls as well. And he styled his hair. And for the school photograph, the head teacher took a comb to his hair. God. Honestly, by the time he'd finished, he looked like Krusty the Clown. Certainly not what I thought.
Outside of sort of fashion and hair design at Argyle House, presumably great education?
Yes, but I was brought up on fashion and hair. Because it wasn't too long after the hair salons that my father opened the clothes shops with his brother, and they set about opening Petrucci. So like going back to his story, while he worked at the hairdressers in Newcastle, he saved his money, and he always told his friend, I will never step on your toes, I won't open in Newcastle. So he took this journey to a place called, and some Geordies would say never to go there, a place called Sunderland. Wow. Where dreams are made, Carl.
That's right. That's where the magic did happen for Petrucci. And of course, I remember as a teenager always saving up, going on a Saturday into Petrucci to buy like maybe, you know, a Kickers t-shirt or something that was considered at the time highly fashionable in anticipation of a big night on the town. So at the time, Petrucci was definitely the place to go. If you wanted to buy, you know, really good logos.
Well, thank you.
In the Northeast.
You probably put me through my education.
I think I did.
And everything else that came with it. So, well, thank you for that, Carl.
And how sort of aware were you at the time, as a young lad, of the business empire that your father was creating? You know, did he used to talk to you about business? Were you sort of exposed to it around the kitchen table?
Of course, every day. And I was always familiar that there's nothing achieved in life without hard work. I always remember on a Sunday morning, we would have to go to wash all of the towels and hang them on the back of the chairs in the salon 70 days. And then we go to church. While we were in church, miraculously, those towels would dry on their own. And come back, fold them up, and then we'd go out for Sunday lunch. And that was a way of life. And on the Saturday, while all my friends were probably watching SMTV and on deck with Cat Daly, there was I sweeping the floor from 8 o'clock in the morning through till 6. And you know what? I used to get £10 a day, but I only got it if everybody thought I worked hard enough for it. My God, it was horrendous. And if that didn't put me off hairdresser for life, nothing else would have done. Do you know what it is? I always remember watching Bruce Forsyth on the Generation Game with Rosemary Ford.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
What's on the doors, Miss Ford? And my ankles would be throbbing. Because I'd been on my feet all day long.
Well, there you are. And I could take that conversation down so many rabbit holes, but I'm not going to. But let me ask. So obviously you were going through private education, so that will have been demanding. And of course you were working in the family business at a weekend. So when you finished your GCSEs, what was the logical next step for you?
Well, my dream, Carl, was always to work in Petrucci. Do you know why? Because my dad used to employ the most beautiful Saturday girls, right? And I thought that was my key to getting myself a wonderful, beautiful girlfriend. And he wouldn't allow it to happen. And I begged and begged and begged, please, Dad. And you know what he said? I will be distracted. The customers wouldn't get the attention that he wanted them to get because my attention would be focused elsewhere. So he made me go and work at a place called T.Y. McGurk's. He made me work for somebody else. It was.
I remember. Yeah.
It was. And I used to go there every Saturday to prove that I could work in retail and learn how to speak to people, how to look after a customer and make sure that well, retail life, really. The meet and greets, they identify the needs. The process was instilled in me in an early day, from an early day, and it really was. But I learned a lot of things in TY McGurk's. I mean, you couldn't do it now, but you can imagine there wasn't just me as the Saturday lad in there. There was a number of other lads, and if you can imagine the amount of testosterone flying around, sometimes you'd fall out with people. But the managers in there had a way of dealing with the fallout, Carl. Do you know what it is?
I've got a feeling you're going to tell me.
I will. At 5:30, when the shop shut, the door would be locked, and they would make a makeshift ring, right? A makeshift ring, and they would put the boxing gloves on and say, right, you have 3 1-minute rounds. And we had to punch each other for 3 1-minute rounds. And looking at me, I'm a lover, not a fighter. But I ended up in there 3 times. And if anybody's watching this, I hope it's Robin Ford, the solicitor, because I bopped him on the nose a few times. And he was my 2 out of 3 successes. The third one was a guy who works in the building industry now called Gary Tansey. If you know Gary Tansey, he is about 6'7". He had a reach on his arm as long as Tyson Fury, and he just kept me on the end of that glove. And I've never been knocked out before, but I had been that day. My God. But it did teach me how to work with people, how to work with difficult people, and how to work with nice people as well. But no, I had a wonderful time, and I'm still friends with Robin, and I'm still friends with Gary all these years later. And I always remember walking back to Petrucci on the corner of High Street West, and I used to wear these loafers, okay, because I was about stylish as well. And because when I used to throw a punch, I used to drag my left foot, right, because I'm left-handed. I'd go like that. And what happened was the sole of my shoe became floppy because I'd been dragging it when, you know, so I used to walk back like a tramp back into the Petrucci empire per se. But yes, valuable lessons learned. And I finally got the chance to work in Petrucci after I proved myself, and I enjoyed it. I didn't get a girlfriend either in there.
Well, you were being well behaved. You were focused only on...
And you, eyes on the prize, Sergio. This is where they want to take us. But I wasn't afraid of hard work. And I was always, I remember being on my knees, cleaning the marble, you know. And it was an instruction from my dad's manager, I guess. But I think she was a bit more power crazy than anything else. Just wanted to prove a point that she could direct and manage me. But I was like an untamable horse, Carl.
Well, some things will never change, and that's perhaps one of them. So tell me, so obviously at that stage, you know, working hard at school, learning retail, in pursuit of perhaps at some point, you know, going into the family businesses. So at what point did you formally cease education?
Well, here's something funny for you. My dad had the bright idea of registering me with the Italian government as a citizen, okay, which meant that I would have to do military service. Now, can you imagine me running around the Apennines, Calabria, yeah, with a little beret? No, me neither, me neither. So I made sure, right, that I stayed in education as long as I possibly could, because if I was in full-time education, then they couldn't conscript me. Now, I'm not saying the reason why I got kept back at Sunderland High School for another year was the reason for this. Some might say I did flunk the exams to remain in education for another year. But no, economics seemed to be a little bit more of a task than I anticipated. It wasn't as fluffy as marketing might seem, but yeah. I went to Sunderland High School after that. I got my GCSEs, and I pushed on as well. I had a tongue for language. I was really good at French, Spanish, Italian, of course. And I put myself through a night class and did Italian GCSE. You know, I only got a B. I know.
Your father's devastation, presumably.
Well, my father brought me up in with Italian language. Some of it was more illustrious than you might expect if I was annoying him now and again. But when I used to go on family holidays, my family couldn't speak English, and that's how I learned how to speak Italian and use the hands, you know. Hai capito, Carlo?
And how important was education to your parents, and I guess just to provide a bit more context, obviously your mum and dad had worked incredibly hard as individuals to create a great life for you. And of course, they'd sent you to private school at a pretty hefty cost. So how important was education, and how did they respond to perhaps you not doing as well as you had hoped?
There's some sayings that have been ingrained in my head from my dad. And you need to remember, my dad grew up in Italy with not much money. He was a child of 9.
Wow.
Yeah. If you weren't up first, you didn't get the best socks.
Yep.
Yeah. And he had challenges, really. And his education, he left school at 14 and he didn't have the best education at all. And he always said, I want to give my children more than what I could ever possibly have. So I guess that was a driver for him. So to go back to your question, he would say things like, those who sleep, Sergio, they never catch the fish. You know what he means by that?
Absolutely.
If you lie in bed all day and you're not motivated, you don't get up and do what you need to do, then you won't get the reward at the end. It's true.
So do you, looking back, do you feel you worked as hard as you could have academically?
Listen, I didn't realize the importance of it until it was just beyond my grasp, and I was very, very lucky. I managed to get onto a course at Sunderland University only because they remembered my name from a letter that I'd wrote to them. And I said, look, the predicted grades didn't work out as they were supposed to. And I guess I talked my way into university because I said, if you give me the chance for the lecturer, I'll never forget, Mike MacDonald, he was called. And he remembered my name from the application. And while I was going through clearing and they were trying to shoehorn me into a course with computers and business, and the only computer I loved was my Sega Mega Drive back in the day, you know.
Street Fighter.
Yeah.
I even
Sonic the Hedgehog.
Indeed.
But I didn't want to do it, and I just said, I just want to do business studies, and I want to do marketing. I love advertising. And this guy was walking past, and for some reason, he looked at the form, saw my name, and took me with him. And I said, listen, I promise. I said, I'll make a deal with you. If I don't perform in my first year, kick me out because I've let you down. And he gave us the chance. And I'll never forget, because I worked hard and I got a 2-1. I got a first for my dissertation.
Right.
It was brilliant. And I took him a nice bottle of Barolo red wine.
Nice.
Because that's the way my dad brought me up. If you get something and someone's helped you on your way, you should always go back to say thank you. And that's one thing to this day, I can't wait to say thank you to you after this, Carl, for getting me on TV.
Absolutely. And gratitude's important, right? I think not often enough do people show their gratitude, whether it be a bottle of red wine, whether it be just thank you. I think there's a lot to be said for that. So obviously you did your university degree at Sunderland, the mighty Sunderland University, and you came out with a 2-1. So what did you then have to consider when it came to what came next? Because of course you've got the family business, but you've then got the desire perhaps to plough your own way in life. So what came next for you?
You know, when I was at university, it was great in a student life. While I'm still friends with them now, while they were having beans on toast, I was having steak and chips. Or while they were having a cold night in the winter, I was toasting my toes on front of the open fire at home, you know. I was lucky, I really was. But I suppose that was the benefit of staying at home and studying. And yeah, I had a part-time job because, again, back then, you could get something called a student loan, and a student overdraft. And nobody taught me about loans and overdrafts. And really, I think it should be something in schools now where children are educated.
As to how to manage money.
Absolutely, because I just saw it as free money. So what really got on my dad's nerves was I would go to designer clothes shops in Durham and Newcastle and spend my student loan on Paul Smith, Armani, Versace, Valentino, and it was my student loan. And it wasn't until the bank manager called the house and said, Sergio, when are you going to start paying your overdraft back? My dad you know, again, he took me to the bank, asked who set the account up, and he cleared it for me. But he said, you've got to pay me back. So, but it won't be for him. I had to go and find a job somewhere else. And I ended up having a little part-time job at Royal & Son Alliance. It was a call centre in Doxford International Business Park. And it was outbound calls. It was a job. I didn't even want the job, really. But the guy asked me to sell me a pen. A bit like the Wolf of Wall Street, you know. I don't even know what my reply was, but I got the job anyway. I did. And yeah, I loved it because that became my Royal & Son Alliance. I was soon later on to be More Than Insurance. That was my More Than family. And that, honestly, I had the best time. And I still made so many friends. And some, sadly, not with us today. But you know what? That set the tone, really, because I used to go to work in a shirt and tie. And I thought, I can't be bothered to go home and get changed from looking like a student. So I used to go to university dressed in a shirt and tie and trousers. I know. And if you think about it, they thought I was a lecturer. That's all right. The foreign students would come to me asking for directions, help with their homework and that. There was opportunities, there was. And yeah, I mean, I won a trip to New York with More Than. I was the best advisor on the phones. I was the irritating person who'd ring you in the middle of the World Cup or in the middle of when your mum was watching Coronation Street. That would be me, asking if you'd like to renew your car insurance or your home. Are you? Now, let me tell you about the pet insurance, because while I was at university, you'll know how this works. You have to do a final year project, dissertation. But what could I do it on? And I thought, well, let's try and channel this. So back in the day, 1997 and 98, there was this thing called cause-related marketing, which is what I based the whole final year project on. And while I was working at More Than, I thought, wouldn't it be a great idea if when you buy your premium, that a percentage of that money from the premium would go to help a cause, a charity, as per se. Now, this is a twist, isn't it? So I wrote my dissertation on a project called Cause-Related Marketing and the benefits of why an organisation should give to a charity to help sell more product and endear themselves to their customers. So I proposed that they would create this thing called pet insurance, right? And obviously, everybody needs it now, but it was new back in the day. So my proposal was that a percentage of their premiums would go to support cat and dog shelters, or the PDSA, yeah? And if you think, well, that was like 25, nearly 30 years ago, all right? And now here I am talking to you about why organizations should contribute to the Red Sky Foundation, not only to make themselves the most popular companies in the Northeast or beyond, but also to put goodness back into society. And I think it's the most remarkable story to think that. I've still got it at home in a hardback book to know that that's what I set out. I had no intention whatsoever about working in a charity or in this sector. I'm certainly not setting my own charity. And if somebody had said, oh, you're going to have this most amazing journey, I wouldn't have believed them. I wouldn't have.
So, of course, you mentioned that you were having a great time at More Than, really enjoying working in that sort of call centre environment. At that point, was there no encouragement from your father to go into business? Because, of course, your father and your mum only knew being self-employed and having a business and creating value. Was there a pull toward the family business?
There was. And it was in my final year when my dad had sat with his brother and my sister was already in the business as well, and my two cousins. And my dad had actually turned around and says, what about Sergio? When's it his chance to come in? Because the transition of it was set up for the children. And unfortunately, it's probably not a secret amongst people who know the family well, but the other side of the family said that there was no place for Sergio. And at that point, you're supposed to go, should we try it again?
No.
Yeah.
I have a question instead. So why was it the other side of the family concluded that you going into the business wasn't the right thing?
Well, it turned out that they wanted it all for themselves. They didn't want my father in the business anymore. They didn't want my sister in the business anymore. And there was a little bit of there was a big fallout between the two. And if you can imagine two Italian families, it wasn't pretty at the end. But you know what? I always believe in the right always comes good.
Yeah, well, karma's for a reason.
I really do. And I knew this is when I had to make my own journey. But the thing is, Carl, I'd always been surrounded by success, okay? The hairdressers was always the best place to go. There was a queue down the stairs of people. There was a technique of how we would keep the customers in the hairdressing shop. And my uncle Carlo, you know, to be fair, he was a fantastic salesperson. And give him his dues, I did learn a lot. You know what he used to do? When the queue was too big, he would spot that if anybody walked down the stairs out the door, that was a missed opportunity, a missed customer. And to him, 10, 15 pounds of floating around there. So my job would always have a single sink in the hair salon to make sure that anybody who wasn't prepared to wait in the queue had their hair washed, because they couldn't go back on the high street with wet hair.
Yep.
So they were all standing down, they're waiting to go to the football match at Roker Park. But because I'd already washed their hair,
They were committed.
They were committed, yes. They'd signed on the dotted line and said, we're going to get our hair cut today. And people fathers and sons, granddads, generations would come through. And if you ask anybody in Sunderland, even Newcastle, people would travel because it was the best place to go. It was a destination, you would call it now. A destination business. And yeah, it was a fantastic time. And when I got my degree, and I had the hat, the gown, or we call it the cap and gown, don't we? Do you know what it is? I thought that was my golden ticket to success. But how was I wrong? I was. And I thought I was destined for great things. But it was hard. I would apply to Rolls-Royce, I would apply to Coca-Cola, Levi's, for a marketing job. Could have been anything just to get my foot in the door. My life was surrounded with adverts, and it was really difficult. And then I got a job at Malmaison, not too far from here. A marketing and sales job, okay? This was it, the most trendiest hotel in the city. But I had to travel from Sunderland to get here. Never forget, if I waited after 5 to 8, I would never arrive on time because of that felon bypass.
Yep.
And no, I loved working there. And again, I learned a new trade, a new set of customers, a new set of businesses. And yeah, I lasted about 7 or 8 months in the job. You know why? Because some man in the Middle East called Bin Laden decided to do what he did, and the world changed for everybody. And unfortunately, hotel travel and business travel was no more, and I got let go. And I'd never been out of a job or education, and I found that a bit weird. My friend's dad gave me a job on a scrapyard. Again, he wanted me to advertise his business, skips and waste management. But it was only a stepping stone, because I got a job at Reg Vardy's. And not a job in the forecourt, by the way, but a job in the head office, and I thought this was it. Now, if you know Reg Vardy and Peter Vardy, he built this grand palace called head office. It was Vardy Marketing. That's
where international.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was back home where it all began, and yeah, it was fabulous. So we were doing the adverts for Ford and Nissan, putting them into papers. The general managers would have to sign off, and then they loved the crack, you know. They loved the banter with me on the phone, as you'd expect. I was saying, Sergio, you're wasted up there. Come and sell cars for me. Come on, you're brilliant. You've got great persona, personalities oozing out of you. The customers will love you. And I said, well, I've got a degree. Dear me, honestly. I've got a degree. I said, car sales is not for me. I help you sell the cars. He said, Sergio, come here and we'll absolutely quadruple what wages you earn now. And I was like, really? And you know what? I made a mistake at head office, all right? We all do. But the thing is, remember, my dad used to have the most popular hair salons in the Northeast, in my opinion. And one of his customers was the Vardy family. So Peter, Margaret, young Peter, Richard, Victoria, the whole family would come and get their haircuts. I thought I was unbreakable when I got a job there. But I did. I made a mistake, and it was either out of the head office into yonder, never to be seen again, or somebody got wind that I needed an opportunity. I needed to get out of the head office, right? So he said, come for an interview at Sunderland Fiat. And
before we talk about that move, what mistake did you make at Reg Vardy, which meant you had to move on?
Wow, what a question, Carl. Shall I tell you the truth?
You must.
I was providing a service for a customer in Scotland, okay? And the service was some insurance when you have 7-day free driver insurance. Yeah, okay. But the policy, the provider of the insurance hadn't set the policy up. So we had this guy driving around in Scotland, unbeknown to him, the 7-day insurance hadn't been activated. I rang up to complain and obviously picked holes in the schedule. And so we needed to sort it straight away. And I was put on hold. Well, I wasn't actually on hold. I was on mute. So the person on the other end of the phone could hear everything that I was saying about them. But obviously, unbeknown to me, that, yeah. So I got called out because I was questioning their integrity, not in the most professional manner, of course. So it was either that or I got a job in the dealership. We could do a commercial break and I'll tell you what happened afterwards. Is that not what we do here? So I had an interview at Fiat, and the guy was called Andy Davies, the divisional director for Fiat and Alfa Romeo, okay? And there was another guy called Terry O'Neill. Honestly, two stereotypical. One was a Cockney, and the other one was a little wiry old fella, right? And Andy, the Cockney, said, "All right, son, what makes you think you're going to sell a car in here then?" And my reply was like that. I said, well, with a name like Sergio, and if I can't sell a Fiat or an Alfa Romeo, no one's ever going to do that. And he started laughing his head off and he said, you've got the job, no more questions.
Wow.
And I think that's why I was a little sharp, you know. But I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I think more so because it goes back to experiences. When I bought my first car with my own money, I bought a Renault Clio. It was black and it had gold badges on the front. It was called the Millennium, all right? I thought it was amazing. But the gold badges were just sprayed. So when I went to wash it, I had a girlfriend. She had a BMW Z3.
Yeah.
And she always used to say, when I wash my car, Sergio, I leave the badge on the bonnet till last because I take great pride in it. Well, I did the same, right? I thought, I'm going to take great pride in getting that gold sparkling. As soon as I put the cloth over it, the gold paint from the spray can, it just wiped up the bonnet and it was like ruined. So I went back down to the dealership and I said to the salesman saw me coming through the door. He went out the back door, didn't want to deal with me again. So in my opinion, I got the worst customer service. When I needed him, when I wanted the car and when he wanted the sale, he was my best friend, Carl, right? When I needed the help afterwards, he didn't want to know. And I'll never forget that lesson. That when I used to sell a car, I used to sell it as though it was the last one I would ever sell. But I also sold it in the how I would like to have been treated. So if there was a problem, don't get me wrong, Fiat stands for fix it again tomorrow, yeah? They would come back. But it's how you look after those people. Because time and time again, families will come back and buy their cars off me all the time. It really was. And I was there 8 years. I'll never forget Peter Vardy. Sir Peter Vardy, by the way, would do his visits on a Saturday afternoon. And the jungle drums would start along Wessington Way. He's here. He's going to call in here. He's going to come here. And he walked up with this air of, wow, power, esteem, Reg Vardy's, you know. And in my eyes, it didn't say Reg Vardy's. It said Sergio's car sales. And I went up to Peter and I said, "So Peter, how great it is to see you today. Are you having a lovely day?" "Yes, I am, Sergio. How's things?" I said, "I just need to tell you how grateful I am." He said, "What for?" I said, "Because that mistake I made in head office, yeah, you, by giving me another opportunity, you've quadrupled my wages." And he just smiled. He smiled and he said, "Good, well done." And I always used to take pride in someone saying, "Well done," or showing gratitude as well. And I was loyal. I was really loyal. And to me, I think whether you were brought up this way or not, but if you weren't feeling too well, I think this day and age, people would have a little cold and they'd call in and say, "I'm sorry, I'm not very well." But I would never have a day off. Honestly, I don't think, I still to this day, I don't know if I did ever, even if I was poorly, I would still turn in for work, you know. But I was committed, I was hungry, and yeah, don't get us wrong, there was people that used to take umbrage to that because I wouldn't stop. And the targets and the commissions were done on bands and how many you'd sell. But just because I hit the top band didn't mean I should have stopped selling. Whereas other lads in there, and ladies as well, who were selling cars, thought that I was a bit too greedy and that I should give other people a chance. But it was instilled in me from an early age that the fish wouldn't come if I was sleeping.
Well, there you are. This work ethic, as you say, was instilled, you know, when you were just a young boy, and therefore it's all you know, right? The harder you work, the better your odds become to succeed. And that's all you knew.
And it really is, and never to expect anything. And you're only as good as your last month. How many times have we heard that?
Totally.
Yeah. So from an experience point of view, what we do now with Red Sky Foundation is anybody who comes into our lives, whether they run, whether they party, whether they climb a mountain, whether they're on the receiving end, everybody gets the treat the same, and with the same empathy, with the same integrity. And we just try and do our job as best we possibly can. And now we've got governance, of course. We always did. But we've got trustees in place. They're there. We have regular meetings. They're minuted. There's strategy. There's forecasting takes place. And it is just like running a commercial business, to be fair. But the brand, I mean, my God, how this transition has happened. So, but then going back to the cars, my firstborn came, Enzo. Wow, powerful name, especially in the motor trade. Enzo Ferrari. Well, actually, it was named after an Italian waiter at Luciano's in High Street West.
Which was an incredible restaurant, which, of course, I think closed down, was it last year?
Yeah.
And has been relocated, I believe. But a phenomenal institutional Italian restaurant.
But in the motor trade, I'd seen so many relationships break down because of the hours. We used to work 9 till 7 every night, and every other Sunday, every Saturday. So the days of being able to go and watch our beloved Sunderland play football were long gone, really. Because you had to be committed, and I think this is why people would fall by the wayside and only the strong survive. And that's, again, the mentality. And yeah, we all have hard times and feelings and emotions. But what I didn't want to see is my own marriage suffer because I was always at work. And don't get me wrong, the pay was fantastic. It really was. And it served a purpose. We went on amazing holidays. But when Enzo came along, I said my attitude shifted a little bit. And I wanted to have those weekends. And the pressure was high. And Sir Peter Vardy had sold out a Pendragon, which is now your Evans Halshaw and your Stratstone. And things weren't the same. It wasn't the same family business that it was always once was. And there's a guy called Ronnie Price. Ron Price would have the Honda dealerships, and he had a couple of other Citroen and Fiat as well. And that, again, where do you think he got his hair cut? "Agostino, tell Sergio to come and work for me. I'm making a fortune. He'll do wonderful." And anyway, he had a dealership up the road. It was the Honda garage. And I was thinking, Honda. Well, well, all the lawnmowers are made of Honda, boat engines are made of Honda. They're never going to break down like the Fiats. So I thought, you know what? Enzo was there, babe in arms. I thought, I just want a bit of an easy life. I don't want cars coming back and me having to, you know, not waste time, but like spend hours on end making sure that the service department looked after them. So I got it. I went to Ronnie Price and I said, right, you've cracked the nut. Sergio's coming.
And you made that decision because you and Emma concluded that you needed to find more time to be together as a family.
We did.
Thought that that job move would give you more time without you taking a haircut on earnings. Is that what you had anticipated?
Pretty much. They worked till 6 instead of 7, but also the main driver was in Reg Vardy's. I saw so many different styles of management. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And sometimes there was managers in there that shouldn't really have been managers.
Right.
And that they were, it's a bit like a footballer. If you make a great footballer, it doesn't automatically make, I mean, through a little Wayne Rooney there, he's had a fair crack at the whip, hasn't he?
Had a tough old tongue.
But again, it's an example that's what they don't. But me being able to be exposed to those management styles, well, again, a crucial part of my own journey and how I manage the Red Sky Foundation now and conduct ourselves. And while I was at Honda, it did great. It was a wonderful place to be. I mean, yeah, we had a great time, and there was lovely models coming out, and the Jazz, the CRV, and yeah, it was fantastic. And then when I was at Vardy's, I got this job to mentor new people coming through, young lads. And one of the lads I got to mentor was like an untamable wild horse, to be honest with you. Wow. I'm still friends with him to this day, and we laugh about how uncontrollable he was, really. And I took him on a little bit of a naughty little brother he was, you know. If you do it this way, it was like you go nightclubbing and that, and come in late the next morning. And anyway, he walked through the door at Honda, pinstripe suit, open shirt, you know. He said, "Hi, Sergio, how are you doing?" I said, "Where are you working these days?" He said, "I work for Sun FM. Radio." "What are you doing there?" He said, "Well, I go around loads of businesses and I sell them advertising space on the radio, fill their heads full of dreams, put their messages on air, and we get customers through the door. It's fantastic." I was like, "Advertising, radio? Wow." I said, "How have you got a job in there?" He said, "They're looking for someone." "Really? I'll get you a job. I'll get you an interview." "Right, you then." So I did. He got me a job and I got an interview. And I always thought, how can I be the best, right? How can this be the best? And the lady said, "We'd like you to come back and do a presentation." Okay? And the presentation is on a new car dealership coming to Sunderland. We want you to do the plan.
Oh, perfect.
Oh, well, it was. That's all I ever knew.
That's right.
I worked in Vardy marketing. I sold the cars. I knew the customer. So I said, anyway, I got back in. I thought, how can I stand out from the crowd? And my dad's friend had a recording studio, didn't he? So I went to him and I said, "Ken, can you do me a favour? This is the brief. This is what we need to do. I want 3 different commercials, opening soon, now on, and then a special offer from servicing, okay?" Right, I said, "Voiceovers, can you help us with that?" He says, "Yes." So he did it all, put music behind it to lift the voice. Honestly, you can imagine. So when I got invited back to do my interview and my presentation, they stopped us halfway through. Just a moment, they got everybody down from the studios, right? "Come and watch this." Honestly, I was like, just amazing. It was. And I thought, how can they not give us the chop? It was sensational.
Why do you get emotional when you collect this story?
Well, because I never heard from them for 2 weeks, right? And the reason why I never heard from them for 2 weeks is because they were getting rid of the lad who got me in there and gave me his job.
Wow.
And that's why, I mean, that's still good pals with him, but I'm emotional because I remember the effort that I put into getting that job.
Yeah.
So to get it, but I have to wait to be told it, it was just, I was so proud.
Yeah.
Because it was another example And I guess that's where the next chapter begins.
Well, I mean, as you say,
Because
that's what made it easy for them to give you the job, because you were just so overly qualified and so incredibly well prepared. But I can see why you're emotional, because one of the negatives to come from you getting this job was, of course, a friend fundamentally was exited from the business. I mean, how did he respond to you getting the job as a consequence?
To be fair, he was okay about it because it was his own doing anyway. But he'd done things that warranted him. But the other reason why I get emotional, because it was when I was at Sun FM that Luna had the op.
Yeah, of course. And as you say, whilst initially you probably did feel a little responsible for the fact that your friend who'd got you the interview was exited, the reality is, as we know, Sergio, life is all about cause and effect. And the effect was him being exited. The cause was probably how he had behaved, how he'd gone about doing his job, and perhaps not treating it as seriously as you clearly had done in the interview. So for sure, you should take only credit from that, and there shouldn't be any slant on what you were able to achieve. So obviously you got the job, and this was you in marketing, which of course is really what you wanted to do after the degree that you obtained at Sunderland University. So obviously, phenomenal role, local radio station, but as you say, this is when your daughter, had challenges with her heart. How did that interplay with the job that you'd always wanted? Because of course, I can see why this would be a massive distraction. So how did you balance work and Luna's heart defect?
Well, again, when I started that job, it didn't say Sun FM. It said Sergio FM. I felt it as though it was my radio station. But and I used to smash the targets all the time. I did smash them out the park, and I'll never forget. It was October the 29th, 2014, and they took us on a team building day. It was called Reaching for New Heights. Okay, and I liked to laugh and carry on, and there was a place with Northumberland where you climb the trees and you go down the zip wire.
Like the lip.
Well, I was going to name them, but well done, Carl.
Or can sponsor my next podcast if they would like to.
Still think they will. Because I was dressed in a monkey suit and I ended up breaking my leg on the zip wire, which was a pivotal time in my life, I guess, when I realized the world would stop because I wasn't able to move. And I'll never forget, I just looked up and I said, "You'll still pay us me wages, won't you?" And he looked down the MD and he said, yeah, we'll look after you. It's all right. And obviously, I went off to hospital, had the operation, and I was willing. I was never shy of work, And I said, look, I'll work hard. And I got to about December time, that was my first experience of a lockdown, that's for sure, because I couldn't move. I used to have customers, I used to have school teachers and head teachers, because they would advertise their school for open days and what have you, come into my house to pick me up, I had, well, that was just unreal. And I had a couple of operations on my leg, but I never failed to hit the target. In fact, it was probably better because I get to see or hear or speak to more customers over the phone than I did when I was doing face-to-face appointments.
Totally.
Because by the time you get to these appointments, it takes time.
Yeah, you're probably being more efficient. Actually, on a consequence of being bedbound.
Well, exactly.
Totally.
But what was happening was it was a detriment to the rest of the team because they were struggling to hit targets. And in the meetings, it was, how's he doing it from his settee?
Yes.
Right, with no means of transport. And you can't hit your targets. Well, and then this is when I realized that I was no more than a commodity. I was just a cash cow. Where do we need to hit the targets? Where we're going to get, who's going to be able to help us get the team target? And you know where they put them? At my door. And I couldn't even drive to get to see anyone. Anyway, that's when life changed for me. And then, sure enough, on the 9th of March, that's when Luna was called into hospital. And So I'd had the broken leg, and then I guess life changes, and life-changing moments really. When she went in the hospital, you'd be horrified if I will tell you, I was sitting by Luna's bedside in intensive care. My mobile phone's pinging saying, "Can you bring any revenue in for the station this week? We're short the target. We're not firing on all cylinders." You're sitting in hospital. You're not doing anything. You're just sitting there by the bedside. Surely you can do some work and get some money in.
Wow.
I'll never forget. Never, ever, ever. In fact, I'm still fired up about that. When I came back out of the hospital, we weren't in that long, to be fair, a week. And I went back on the Monday. And again, most people would take time off and, roll over and surrender a little bit. And I was called in for a performance review. Said I was a few grand behind target. I'll never forget. I was in the BIC, the BIC? Business
Innovation Centre in Sunderland, next to the Stadium of Light.
Coffees, nice canteen there, quite busy at lunchtime. And listening to somebody, my line manager, saying that I was behind target, and if I didn't get my finger out, I was going to go down a performance review. After everything I'd done, I brought the station record sitting on my settee, And I'll never forget, there was a table between the two of us. And she told me that if I kicked the chair back, stood up, and the chair went flying, and I just lost my temper, really. And all right, there's ways to deal with this kind of thing, but I didn't know anything other, and I was like so passionate about him because the effort, and nobody can understand why Sergio hits his targets and smashes these unachievable things. And I called them out. I said, "You've got these values, these corporate values. We all hear about them: professionalism, integrity, empathy, But do they really work to them? Well, no." So when I called them out and I said, "This is absolutely bang out of order," then she didn't last too long afterwards. And then the following year, I wanted to do something. And I still did, but I hadn't done any fundraising, and this was in the March 2015. And then somebody called us out and said, "I thought you were going to do some fundraising," and it was February.
And just to ask, sorry to interrupt you, Sergio, but when you sat down with the manager from the radio station, and she was effectively talking about the fact that you were behind on revenue target as a consequence of you clearly supporting your daughter and family. And that, as you say, is her evidencing a complete lack of empathy and a complete lack of care. How were you able to remain committed and motivated beyond that conversation? Because of course, that's probably the first time that you'd realized you were a commodity and you could be easily exited from the business, because of course that is a risk, isn't it, that any employee carries. So how did you manage to dig deep and remain committed to
the name Sergio FM became bigger? It was more lit up in my imagination. Now it was bigger than ever before. It was my reputation amongst all of my clients who had become friends as well.
Yes.
It was the passion that was fired up, and I knew I was just a commodity, but I knew that if I created something and enough noise, that other stations might come knocking your heart, your Metro Radio, and I was making a bit of a name for myself. I was, because there isn't many Sergios in the city, and I'm not Sergio wasn't Red Sky at the time, but when somebody called me out and said, "I thought you were going to do your fundraiser," I still did, and with all these events, I was exposed to how they were set up. They had corporate sponsors. They had posing boards. I mean, it's nothing new, is it? You go at the Oscars and they've got MasterCard, or they've got the Brits and that, and they're all standing in front of these boards. And I thought, I need a media partner. I can't exactly go to Heart because that's our competition. And I said, "Oh, would you like to be the media partner, just to use the brand, really?" We had other brands on there like BMW and Specsavers and that, but they came from my contacts within the motor trade. My friends had the franchises for Specsavers, but we looked good.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So straight away. And something amazing happened on this, never forget, it's 26th of February. 26th of February. And it was only 2 weeks before that we had the idea of having the Red Sky Ball. And I went to the Freeman Hospital. Luna was going for a checkup. And I told them what we were doing. And then somebody from the charity associated, the Children's Heart Unit, came out and said, "Oh, what's your plans? What's your plans?" I said, "Well, we're going to have a ball. It's going to be called the Red Sky Ball after when the morning of the operation." She said, "Oh, brilliant. How many people are you thinking about having?" And I said, "Well, to be honest with you, we thought maybe 50 people, family and friends. But then we thought, why not go bigger and better?" And said, "Well, when are you going to do it for 350 people?" I said, "Yeah. Next year? Back end of this year?" I said, "No." "2 weeks' time?" She said, how stupid. She says, "Don't do it." She says, "You'll never succeed. You'll be disappointed. You'll let yourself down. You'll feel like you've let us down, and it'll put you off doing anything again." She said, "I'll help you, but don't do it. You'll never sell out. You'll never be able to get the prizes together." I said, "It's a bit late for that." She says, "What do you mean?" Sold out in 3 days.
Wow. There you are.
I said, I might need a hand. She said, "What with?" I said, "Well, I've never done anything like this in my life." I said, I could do with a couple of people helping us sell raffle tickets and that. Would you be able to send some staff along?" I said, "Aye, no problem." So, well, and I did. Told the story. When I think back how far we've come, it was on a little projector, right? And it was like a slide thing, acetate, you know?
God, yeah.
On a drop-down film in the Stadium of Light in the Montgomery Suite on a projector screen. And I thought, there's no way I could tell my story on a stage. Hey, look at us now. You know, so obviously I had the benefit of working in the radio station. I pre-recorded this, you know, and it was so hard. I couldn't even get past the first line.
And of course, last week you hosted the Red Sky Ball, and for those who weren't there, which is probably very few people from this region, Sergio, how much in total was raised for the foundation in one evening?
Over 203 grand.
Which is incredible. And, you know, you, Emma, and of course the entire team who made it possible should be so proud because the number of people that will benefit from the money raised in that one evening is just incredible, isn't it? So congratulations to you, Emma, and the broader team.
Thank you.
It takes hundreds of people to make
like
that happen, doesn't it?
It does, and you should never forget the people who help you.
That's right.
And they are the unsung heroes, the volunteers, the trustees, the support. I know people in this sector who could only dream of having the support that we have in the backing. But again, it doesn't necessarily be the volunteers. It could be my business contacts in communities. It could be the people who've done some remarkable things, or even the people who want to give back to us because we've supported them. And yeah, there's so many stories. Like I say, that from 2016, we did it 2017, 2018, and then we introduced the White Party as well, because John Adamson at Ramsay has become a very, very close friend and advisor as well. We wanted a piece of the pie. And I said, I would never take the red sky ball out of Sunderland because there's nothing quite like it. I was wanting to create something that was unrivaled, basically, and that would always have this prestige about coming to the red sky ball. And it was always about the time that Luna had her operation in the March time. And honestly, it's just the drive and the determination. And I'll never forget when I was at the radio station, I asked every year before I left in 2018, I said, the final straw was, can I have a copy of the newspaper, please? Because we've got a piece in the paper in the centrefold. And honestly, the guy opened the paper, found the page, and he went, when's this merry-go-round gonna stop? Word for word. Wow. And he pushed the paper to us. I couldn't believe it.
Wow.
And that's what...
that was the final straw.
Well, not just that, but it's, to be honest with you, it's the petrol in my fire.
Yep.
It's what burns the engines. Because I'll never forget that. A merry-go-round, really? Oh. A merry-go-round. Do you want to know what a merry-go-round? Going round your daughter's bedside every day. Oh. That's your merry-go-round. And I said, this is the reason why I do it. And there was a picture of her with the dressing on her chest. Let's see. Honestly, it's like, sometimes things need to be put in your face, and the reality is that life is funny, and unless you've been placed in a situation or you've ever been put in a position when it's a matter of life and death or a life-changing moment, no one understands.
Well, no, and some people can be pig-headed, and of course not everyone will have been in the situation that you and Emma have been in. But actually, if you just take the time to understand, you can be empathetic, you can appreciate how difficult it must have been, because anyone who is a parent just understands what they would do for their children. So, you know, whilst thankfully our daughter hasn't had to go through what Luna has gone through, I can only imagine how devastating, how unnerving, how emotional it must be, because, you know, your children are just the world, right?
They are.
So I totally can only empathize.
And let's not forget, this is a happy story, because
of course, the ending is.
Yeah, Luna is fit, healthy, probably has
which is awesome.
A better working heart than mine and yours put together. And it's a celebration.
Of course it is, Sergio. That's right.
These things are normally born out of a tragedy, out of death. And that's generally the motivation. And we, you know, weirdly, I would say I'm grateful. I'm grateful for those comments, because if it hadn't, and I still hear them now, you'll never do it. You'll never succeed.
And obviously there's been many times through your life whereby I think the people around you have said, you can't, Sergio, you won't succeed, Sergio, don't do it, Sergio. What is the one thing that creates that fire in your belly to prove those people wrong? Because you seem to do that time and time and time again.
I guess I'm driven by the fear of failure.
And why are you afraid of failure? Bearing in mind, arguably one never failed, you just get given an opportunity to be better.
Well, I get given chances and I take them with both hands. I get people who stand by, and don't get us wrong, there's people who have come into our lives since and probably only wanted to do it for their own self-gain or support, you know, to look good. Which is fine as well, you know. At the end of the day, there's value to be had in all manner of ways. But the driver is the people who say you can't do it. But why not?
And why do you think the people who say you can't say that? What do you think they are trying to achieve from, I guess, dampening your motivation and ambition?
I think self-doubt on their own part. They're maybe a bit envious, you know, that they wish that they could do something like that. Or from the outside in, honestly, Carl, it looks like a polished machine, and that's the image that and the brand, and that's the it is a prestigious brand. It really is, and we're surrounded by great stories and great people. But honestly, under the surface, it's like it's a million miles an hour.
Yeah, it is, and I know firsthand that everything you do is incredibly demanding, because to get corporate sponsors, to get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people to commit to attend an annual charity ball isn't easy, but it's your absolute determination and your total belief in the Red Sky Foundation that makes it successful, which of course is why you and Emma have been awarded an MBE. I mean, tell me, that must have just been the proudest moment ever for you both.
It really was. It really was. I mean, this year's Red Sky Ball, you'd be falling off your chair if I told you we didn't start selling the tables until the second week of January. Because how could I go and ask someone to spend the money just before Christmas? How could I do it before and after Christmas, And I need to get better at it, to be fair.
I think you do a good job.
But the MBA thing, man, honestly, when the letter came through the post, it was funny, because Emma came through the door first, and I was pottering on in the front, and just doing Sergio things, really, and I went into the kitchen, and there she was opening the post, and there was a pile of it, and she said, "Oh, what's this? It's come from Buckingham Palace by the King." And I was like, "Oh, what is it?" She opened it up, and there it was. She'd a letter from the King to say, "Would you accept the award for that would be nominated?" Didn't say who by. And I was like, "Wow, that's amazing." I was looking through the letter, and it was addressed to her. And had the little tinker, she'd hidden mine, right? So I thought it'd just been a one for her. And in my head, I'm thinking,
that's cruel.
All the graft I've done, all the late nights, all the emails, all the phone calls, and I was thinking, and you getting this? And I mean, it was over the moon for her, but people watching this, who knows, they'll be saying all I mean, thinking, well, where the hell is mine? Is mine in the post and has come second class? And then she didn't let me wait too long before she said, "Surprise, you've got one."
Naughty of Emma, actually, isn't it?
It is naughty, it is. But, I mean, listen, what has been achieved in such a short space of time, we got the charitable status on the day of lockdown, and we had Boris Johnson sitting on television saying that we couldn't have a party, telling the nation that the social distance, couldn't go outdoors. You just had Cheltenham with all the crowds, the super spreaders and everything, and it was like, really? And so to get to where we have done, here we go again.
It's incredible. It is nothing shy of incredible. The selflessness that you and Emma on a day-to-day basis convey in pursuit of raising the profile of and funds for those who need your support is just incredible. So huge congratulations.
Thank you.
And I'm grateful to you for the work that you do for the benefit of others. If there were only more selfless people like you and Emma, the world might be a better place.
Listen, there's loads of people. There's loads of people out there, and they're doing amazing things, and they're just, they should be championed more.
Yeah, I agree.
They really should be. And there's people in the sector, there's causes, there's charities out there, and they're doing an amazing job, and I think they shouldn't go unnoticed. But
I agree.
I honestly cannot sit here without saying it was a one-man thing. Yeah, I have sleepless nights and all of that, and the organisation, it is. But we have developed a strong team, and I guess I'm just a little cog in it now, and I guess it's well-oiled, that cog.
Yeah, it is.
And people say, "Oh, it must be easy, you just pick the model up and do it again." So, well, I've never had anyone write it down or put it into a strategy or anything like that. And doing it, the secret is, it's just like somebody was a guy called John Mowbray. He said, "How's it going?" I said, "John, honestly," I said, "I'm stressed to bits, John." He says, "What for?" I said, "Well, what if it just doesn't go to plan?" And he said, who knows the plan, Sergio? I said, well, me. He said, does anyone else? No. He said, well, if it doesn't go to plan, nobody else knows. So just crack on, you know. And I said, well, that's probably good advice that I took.
Oh.
And honestly, the growth has just been crazy. The partnerships formed has been unreal. The people coming in on board. I always dreamt that I could possibly just get one person to wear a Red Sky t-shirt in the Great North Run. Last year, we had 400 and odd. This year, I'm not going to spoil the surprise, but we're absolutely out of the park. We've taken over, and I promise you, we give them big boys from London a run for their money, and we'll have them on the ropes because this is my backyard.
Let me ask a penultimate question before we wrap up today's podcast.
Sergio. We have so many minutes on the meter. I didn't know that we'd be here so long, Carl. Wow.
Obviously, if you just look back to when you were a young boy, and you know your father was giving you words of wisdom, what did you wish that you could have known then that you know now? What's the one bit of advice you would give the young Sergio?
Listen and don't be stubborn. I think we've all had a father figure in our lives, and mine's the best, like yours is to you. And I think valuing every opportunity. I'm lucky that there's still, my mum and dad are still in my life, which was a nice experience to take them to the palace as well. And because we both got one, it meant Emma could take her parents.
Incredible.
We could take the two kids and experience it as a joint thing. I would just say, just make the most of everything. Because honestly, there was a guy last weekend, God bless his soul now, Colin Elric, yeah, just taking my glass in a snapshot. And I said to Emma, I'm 50 next year, you know, and she'd been saying, oh, what would you like to do? Would you want a big party? I says, you're joking, aren't you? I said, I cannot do any more big parties.
That's right, party days.
She said the children would love to go to Japan. I said, well, then he died. I says, book that holiday to Japan, right? And yeah, so that's the plan. And if I was going to tell anybody in the same boat now who is on a similar journey and not too sure of what direction they wanted to go in, because listen, at this age, GCSEs and A-levels, there's so much responsibility put on these young lads and lasses' shoulders. It's just to be happy.
Yep. And my last question, Sergio, is, obviously, I know you and I know the work that you do, and I know your absolute unquestionable commitment to everything you do, including the Red Sky Foundation. But of course, you have a number of other sort of business and non-business interests. If I was to ask everyone who knows Sergio, what's the one word you would hope they would use to describe you?
Canny.
That's a good word. On that note, it has been a pleasure, Sergio, having you on my Confessions of an Entrepreneur podcast. Thank you.
Carl,
thank you for everything you do.
Thank you. It's been like a therapy session, this, I think, hasn't it? Wow. I hope you get the viewers that you wanted to. And thank you for giving me the time on what's going to only be a busy day for you as well. And I hope you get out what you want to achieve, and the people watching this can take something out of it, you know?
I'm sure people will. I certainly feel inspired. I'm very humbled having spent some time with you, and I'm sure our viewers likewise. So thank you, Sergio. It's been an absolute pleasure having Sergio Petrucci on my Confessions of an Entrepreneur podcast today. It was great to go right back to the beginning and understand some of the key lessons that Sergio's father taught him. The two key lessons for me being the importance of hard work and the importance of taking nothing for granted. Of course, it was interesting to understand a bit more about the fact Sergio's father did not at an early stage want Sergio in the family business, and I suspect that's because he wanted Sergio to find his feet independently of the family business, and wanted Sergio to have the autonomy and the freedom to perhaps decide where he wanted not only to work, but perhaps the areas whereby he wanted to focus. Of course, Sergio, having not joined the family business, then went to Sunderland University and studied marketing. And of course, he has had since then a very successful career, working for some very large corporates, including Reg Vardy, and more recently, of course, Sunderland Radio, before Sergio decided, on the back of adversity, to set up the Red Sky Foundation, which of course Sergio and his wife Emma set up on the back of having faced material adversity due to Luna, their daughter, having a severe heart defect. And as Sergio said, the work of the superheroes at the Freeman certainly saved Luna's life, and as a consequence, I'm inspired that Sergio and his wife Emma decided to set up the Red Sky Foundation to not only celebrate the work of the superheroes at the Freeman, but also to raise much needed funds to allow the Freeman to continue the work they do and to support families who perhaps have children who, like Luna, have had challenges along the way, whether it required operation or a heart transplant. The Red Sky Foundation, 8 years on, have raised millions of pounds to support families, both in the region and further afield. And Sergio's absolute commitment to work hard, to do great things for others is just so inspiring. Sergio clearly talks about his journey in a very emotional way. It was brilliant to see the King award Sergio and Emma with an absolute, much deserved MBE last year for all of the work they've done through the Red Sky Foundation. And of course, it's great to see, despite the many setbacks that Sergio has had, despite perhaps Sergio hearing from many people along the way that he perhaps wasn't able to achieve some of the things he has done, the fact that he doesn't see no, only sees yes, and actually sees no as an absolute red rag to a bull, is probably why Sergio and Emma are achieving things that many won't achieve in their lifetime. I'd like to thank Sergio and Emma for all they do through the Red Sky Foundation for the benefit of the thousands of families that they continue to support. It means the world to them. You have been watching Confessions of an Entrepreneur, powered by RG. If you would like to download this podcast or any other podcast from our Confessions of a series, then please do from wherever you download your podcasts. But for now, it's been a pleasure having you join us on this podcast, and I look forward to seeing you on future Confessions of a podcasts.